everyone, welcome back. This video I'm going to cover the authentication architecture, and we will talk about we will have some hands-on experience on three different ways to do the authentication. Okay. At the heart of the Spring Security authentication model, let me hide the pen. Okay. Yes, the Spring Security, what it is. Okay, is a Spring Security context holder. We are going to deal with it later when we talk about JWT. Okay, it contains a security context, and the security context holder, which is this one, is where Spring Security store the details of who is authenticated, and later on for authorization filter, right? And it has to check the permission, right? Where the authorization filter to get a permission is through here. Is through this security context holder. It will get the authorization in order to do the authorization permission checking. Okay. Spring Security does not care how the Spring Security holder is popular. Don't care. Okay. If contain value, it is usually as a current authenticated user. Okay, and if you want to get the context by yourself, you can use this code. Get context, then you will get a security context, which is this part. And from a context, you can get the authentication, this object. This is authentication. And from authentication, you can get what's the principals, credentials, and authorities. And later on, definitely we're gonna deal with this mixed model, because once we implement our own authentication, okay, then we have to do what? We have to populate this one in order for Spring Security's built-in authorization filter to do the authorization checking for us. Okay, so very important. Spring Security context holder will hold the Spring Security context. And the main thing is it have authentication, which have a represent currently logged in user. Okay. The authentication. I couldn't find the erase. Let me erase this part. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Take here. The authentication object. This authentication eventually gonna be an object. Here, see here, authentication. You can have different, like a username, password, authentication token, different implementations. Okay. Serves two main purpose in Spring Security, as input to the Spring Authentication Manager to provide credentials a user has provided to authenticate. Okay. So in this case, is authenticated is a false, which means if we want to do authentication, we pass this authentication object to Authentication Manager to do the authentication. Okay, at that time, if authenticated, gonna be returned false, and we are going to use it later when we do JWT. We are going to use Authentication Manager to do the authentication for us. Okay, at that time, you're going to see where it's being used. Okay, and the second case is authentication if it's already logged in. If it's already been authenticated, then it's gonna represent a currently authenticated user, and we can get it from security context, which is get it from here. This one. Oh, sorry, from this one. Okay. Do I have clear something? Do I have clear? Okay. Anyway. And the authentication object contains a principal. Principal is an instance of what? User details, and we're going to deal with it later. Okay. And the credentials is a password. Okay. And the authorities contains granted authority instance. Okay, which is the permission the user have. So here is an example of authentication. This authentication is an interface, and it has like concrete implementation, like a username, password, authentication token. We are going to use this one later. Okay. It also have others like Remember Me, Anonymous, and pre-authenticated authentication tokens. for us, the one we deal for this playlist, the one I deal, I'm only deal with username password authentication token, and you will see later, okay? And the object of an authentication, you're gonna have kind of like this one. You're gonna have authorities. Okay, here is no authority. Okay. And it will tell if it's authenticated. This will represent the current user, which is the password, the user, and the authorities. And is account not expired, locked, credential not expired, enabled, active, true or false. And have a name. Okay. And next one we are going to talk about is granted authority. This one we are going to use later when we talk about authorization architecture. Okay. The granted authority object are inserted into the authentication object by the authentication manager and later used by access decision manager, which means when they want to check if the user has a permission to do something, it's going to consult all your authority. And here example, this is also an authentication object. Just now, this authorization authorities is empty, but this one, for this authority, it has one is role admin, one is role user. Okay. Okay, this is this one. And the authority is just a simple form. You can be a string like a user, admin, role admin, like a. And if we use a role, by default, you're gonna have a role underscore role prefix there. And we'll talk about details later, okay, when we talk about authorization, okay. And here also show you if we want to configure for the in-memory one for the user, like this way. If you connect roles, you're gonna have admin user like this way, okay. Now let's take a look at authentication flow, okay. Spring Security provides comprehensive support for different authentication username mechanism, like a username password. That's what we will deal for this video, for this playlist, I should say. And others, you take a look at by yourself, okay? And now let's take a look at the flow of the authentication. First, when the request comes, okay, the request will be delegated to the authentication filter. And this authentication filter is what? Based on what you configured. If it's what? If it's a form login, it's going to be delegated to username and password authentication filter. And if it's being configured as HTTP basic, okay, then here this authentication filter is going to be HTTP basic authentication filter. So this filter here is general, okay. We have to take a look at what we configured. By default is the form login, okay. And when we do this one, we will have this authentication object. But this authentication object currently is what? This authentication object currently is not authenticated, which is authenticated is a false, okay. It just carry what? It just carry username password which user input, okay. And it's going to delegate it to what? Authentication manager. Authentication manager gonna have a method called is authenticate, okay. And it will take authentication as a parameter argument. And this authenticate itself also doesn't do a job. It will delegate this request called authentication provider. And for this authentication provider, it will have some built-in ones, and it can also write your own. Okay, we will take both cases later. And for authentication provider, it will request two things in order to do authentication. One is UserDetail service. One is password encoder. UserDetail service is interface, which will have a method we have to implement called the load user by username. Okay. It will find the user by username, and later on we'll get the password from it returned from database. Then use the password encoder to check if the password stored in the database and the password you pass through the authentication is the same or not. If the same, it's going to do what? It's going to say pass. If not, it's going to do unauthorized. Okay. So after everything finished, which is if it's pass, okay. Let me go back. Okay. If it pass, then go back. go back to here, and here we are also when it go back, it also populated this authenticator, okay, this authentication. And now this authentication will contains all the details about currently logged in user, the username, the authorities, okay. And you will go back authentication. Eventually, in the security context, here also have authentication, okay. Authentication. Eventually, in the security context, it's going to hold this authentication, which represent currently logged in user. That's how to do, okay. The flow, we may need to come back later. Basically, if we want to implement our own authentication way, we have to deal with this one, we have to deal with this one, we have to deal this one, we have to deal this one, okay. And if we use built-in like HTTP basic or form login, the basic one, the two things you will deal is these two, okay. Depends the scenario you want to implement. Here is the details. I will briefly go through, okay. Security field to perform authentication. Authentication manager will ask provider manager. Here have one here. Here we also have a provider manager. Okay, provider manager gonna do this one. Okay, let me see if it's correct. Yes, okay. And then previous diagram I just didn't draw it. This one, okay. Didn't draw on the diagram to save the space. Okay. Okay, and then we are going to have what? Then we are going to have the authentication provider. Definitely we are going to deal it with a letter, okay. You can provide your own. Now let's take a look at user detail service, which is this one, user detail service, this one, okay. And user detail service, it is an interface, only has one abstract method called load user by username, which means you give me your name, I will try to load a user from database, in memory, whatever you want, okay. And if it's successful, you give me your details. If not, you give unauthorized, right? It already have default implementation. The default implementation of user detail service only registers default credentials in the memory or application. The default is default username is user. Where the username default one is user. The password by default is randomly generated UUID in the console. You already see, okay. User detail service always associated with the password encoder. You have to do, because otherwise, how can I know how you encode the password, right? So the password encoder is used to verify if a password matches existing encoding. When we replace the default implementation of user detail service, we must specify a password encoder. And this is one copy which generated the security password in the console, which is UUID. Okay, and we'll deal with user detail service later. The last demo, which is DLO, Authentication Provider. Okay. And password encoder have, if you want to implement by yourself, you can do, but it has also built-in ones, okay. If you want, you just implement this password encoder interface, then do have these two methods implemented. But for this course, I'm not going to do, okay. And there are lots of password encoder built in, and here is a bunch of them. The first one is a no password encoder. Basically everything is a plain text, okay. And there are a bunch of others. The one we are going to use is this one, bcrypt password encoder. You can also pick others as you want, okay. Now let's start getting some hands-on experience. The first one is we are going to customize our user detail service instead of the default ones. The first customized user detail service is called InMemoryUserDetailsManager, and this one is also a built-in one, okay? And this class stores credentials in memory, which can be used by Spring Security to authenticate any incoming request. Right? Default ones, okay. Now let's take a look at this one. And for this one, just do a few configurations. Just in the configuration, have the user detail service and the password encoder. Okay. So now I'm going to go and close everything, and just open Spring Security Config, and then here bin and the public user detail service. Okay. And the first one is built-in one, and the second one you have to do is a password encoder. And here we are return new byte-bricked password encoder. And for the user detail service, we are going to use InMemoryManager. Okay. And this one manager. Okay. And you take a look at it here. Probably this one. Not this one. Let me see. Okay. See here. When we use in-memory user detail service manager, in-memory user detail manager, it will implement user detail manager. This one it will extend on user detail service. Basically, this manager now is an instance of user detail service. As we mentioned, if you want to customize, if we want to customize our authentication way, you must customize user detail service and password encoder based on the level. Okay, you can also customize this authentication provider. We're gonna do later. Okay. So here, this one will give us a user detail service. This will give us a password encoder with based on what we used here. Okay, and here we can build a few users. Okay, and user. This is user one, like a user equals user dot. I use what? I use couldn't remember. Okay, user detail user build. Details user dot build. Okay, dot build. And then between them, then you can add uname admin dot password. I'm going to use the password encoder dot encode this password. I will use 1 2 3 4. Okay, let's see 1 2 3 5. Okay, and then you can also have a role admin. You got me? And this is the first one, and we can have this is user. This is admin. Then I use admin here. Then you can also use user details. User equals user dot builder. Okay, and here you can use username is user, and then password is password encoder dot encode. Okay, 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, and you can also have a role is what's name user. Okay, because this user and dot builder gonna return a user detail. Then for this manager, you can dot create user, which is admin, and for manager you can also create a user return manager. Okay, so now we are implement our own user detail service and our password encoder. Later on, when we make a request, Spring Security trying to do the authentication. Okay, Spring Security trying to do authentication. In the authentication manager, it will call the authentication provider. The provider detect, okay, oh, you have your own user detail service, you have your own password encoder, then it's going to use these two instead of built-in one. Built-in one is what? Built-in one is because we customize here instead of these two. Okay, now let's take a look at if it works. Okay, so my password inside configuration is 1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. We have admin. Okay. Oh, admin and user. Now let's restart. And I'm going to do this security HTTP. Okay. And we'll still make a request to the products. Our configurations here, no change. Okay. And here, let's take a look at if a user 1 2 3 4. See if it works. Now it's denied 4.1. See 4.1 denied. Okay, because it's not going to use this one because we customized use our user detail service admin and the user detail service user. And the thing you need to do is, suppose we use we have to change the user to be under 345. Okay, and now you get everything, right? And you can also change it to be admin 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, no problem. Okay, everything works. So this is how we customize our user detail service and password to be used by Spring Security to verify the user name and password and role. We can also check a role. Okay, if we have a role, we will do later. Okay, first we are doing authentication. For this part, we can delegate to later. Okay, now this is the first way, which is built in memory. Okay, and in memory, not always the case. What do? We may want to connect to a database, right? And there are another one called the JdbcUserDetailsManager. This one is also another implementation of user details, okay? And unfortunately, nowadays, for using this one, you have to create tables by yourselves. You have to create. It usually can do is you have schema.sql under the resources, which you project root. It will automatically load, not download, okay? So for demo this one, we have to we have to do this one. Okay, so now I'm going to connect to our database. What I'm going to do is where create database. Here I'm going to connect to the database using the integer built into a data source. You can also use a workbench, any tool you like. Here, this is my username. And this is my password. I will apply. And here I will create a table, schema database, not a table, sorry, my bad, okay, which is called Spring Security 1, okay. Okay, this is schema, okay. Then in our console, in our POM, I will need to add two dependencies. Click here. I will add two, which is in the SQL. We have a Spring Data GPA and have MySQL because I connect to my MySQL. Okay. And after we add successfully, I will make sure my dependency is here. Spring Data. Do you see this one? And the Spring Data. I added successfully. Okay. So I'm going back, and now I'm going to execute these two. Okay, now let's continue. I got it. It's the same thing. Okay, just when I copy from, I don't want to write it from scratch. And when I copy from a slide, it has some special characters which don't work. So here, I should have a console. Do you see console somewhere? I didn't use this one pretty often. This one. Okay, let's see if it works. Execute. Refresh. Refresh. Oh, doesn't work. Okay, so if it doesn't work here, then I have another way. Probably here I have a workbench. Let me execute it there. Okay. Here. Okay, here have Spring Security 1. Then we can write a SQL. Okay. Okay, so here. And then execute. Oh, no, I have to execute everything. Execute. Execute. Okay, successful. Okay, just now I didn't highlight this is a Spring Security 1. Now you can see authorities and users, two tables. Now and then when I go back, refresh, here we have two tables, authorities and users. That's what we're going to use. Okay, let's go back. So here we have users and authorities. Okay, and the next thing we are going to do is utilize, which is query from here. which query from the tables instead of the hard coded in the memory. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I have to configure to connect to a database. So I have the code ready. I don't want to deal by myself, which is here. Okay, and I just copy and then I'm going to paste in my configurations file. And these two you can comment now, not needed anymore. And here you will have a data source driver because we are MySQL. Okay, this is username password, and this is the to which database I'm going to call Spring Security 1. Okay, which is match the one I created here. Cancel. Okay, and I'm going to using create job, doesn't matter. This one will show the SQL, which when it generates the tables or make the queries. Okay, this is one. Next one, we are going to change our configurations. Okay, to follow the best practice or keep all the code for you, I'm going to do is I'm going to comment. I'm going to make a copy of this one. And I'm going to call JDBC, okay? And this is JDBC, and I'm going to comment this one. And once we comment the previous one, which is in memory, this one will not be used. Then the Spring, when I start application, it's going to use JDBC. So you have two configurations. We don't need to do anything on this one. Instead, this one we are going to be changed. The one we are going to change is called the JDBC. What it is? Okay, called JdbcUserDetailsManager. JD. Here we're not using these two. We're using JdbcUserDetailsManager. Okay. Manager equals new JDBC, and let me see if I can pass them automatically here. Admin user. Okay. Oh, this one cannot pass. So I'm going to have manager dot. Here also need to set a data source, and you have two ways to set a data source because it's going to connect to the database, right? You have two ways. The first way is have a data source here. When Spring trying to generate a bin for this user detail service, which use this code, it will automatically generate a data source. You can also do like this way. Okay. You can also set it using like this way. Dot create user, okay, and manager dot create user, and I will have admin as user before, and the return manager, and other things same. And what's going to happen is when we're trying to do authentication, these two users gonna be inserted into the SQL for us. Okay, or you can manually create a user and authorities by yourself. You can do it, okay? But here I'm just going through the simple case. I'll ask it, populate and insert there. Let's take a look at tables. What? Let me restart. JDBC, right? Configuration. Okay, let me restart. Let's see the tables. Oh, have rows and have users. And this is a password we put as 12345 12345. Okay. And username, password. Okay, then we can do change. I do test, not a change. Sorry, my bad. Okay, and here is admin. It should work. Okay, should work. Okay, because we use the same username, password. Okay, and if I change the password to be something else, it failed. Because the admin's password is not this one. Okay, we can also use user 12345. Okay, still works. See here, no problem. Okay, so this is the one, and the query which Spring Security use is this one. This two for username and this is for authority. We can check if it is there. Let's see. It's here or somewhere else. I probably somewhere else. This is not. It's not here. It's somewhere. Somewhere. I remember it. It was. Let me wait a minute for a second. Okay. Let me execute this one more time. Here the I think it's this one. See here, like select from security. Oh no, not this one, not this one. It should have somewhere which will tell you the queries. I just couldn't find it now. Oh my god, where it is? Okay, you find it by yourself. Okay, somewhere when I make a query, they should give it to you. But anyway, the idea behind this thing is now we are connected to a database now, and it looking for username password from database now, and the one we use is JdbcUserDetailsManager. Okay, and you may have a question. The question is, I don't like those, and I don't want my table name to be username, which is exactly as the default ones. I want to call something else. Can I do it? Yes, you can do. And with that, you can customize your queries. Okay, we can also write custom queries to fetch user and authority details if we use custom DDL schema, which is database table schema. Okay, use different table and columns. Okay. And so we basically have two queries, and one is queried by the name, one is queried by the authority, and then you will set on your JDBC UDetail. So here we can do is we can write another, we can create another two tables. Okay. So here, let's create another tables. I will call, what should I call? Generate table. I will call table name called employee. How about it? Employee. And I'm going to add a column. Column name is called email. How about it? And the email is Vacha. Do you know Vacha? Yeah, Vacha 255. That's good enough. Okay. Then we have another column which is called a password. And the password is Vacha255. Okay, and if you want to have others, you do by yourself. Okay, and then we are going to have we also need to have authority. Authority need to have username and authority. Okay. We can have another one enabled because that's been required. You can also directly put a one. You know, one means true, enabled, and not now, and not now. Great. Okay. Employee. Let's create another table. New table, and table. This one, what do you want to call? It calls authority. Employee. Let's call roles. I don't have a good name for that. And other one which is username. Okay, I think it's username. It's using username. Well, username is what? Okay, and here we give username is Vacha255. Okay, and then add one more is authority. Okay, and I have a Vacha255. Okay, and not now. Okay, and for primary key, anything you deal it by yourself later. Okay, so now we're gonna have some users. Let's add some users, and email is john@test.com. Password I'm going to copy from my user table because I know this one is what this entire one is 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so I'm going to put it here 1 2 3 4 5. Enabled is 1. Okay, true. And add one more, which is Edward at test.com. And I'm going to copy exactly same thing. 1. Okay, and commit. Okay, now refresh. We have 2 users, and now we go to the roles. I will just add an like for this one, John at what's the test.com. I have a role admin, and for next one, what's the Edward at test.com. The role is user. Okay, now okay, so we have let me check the username match. Okay, test.com. So we have 2 users, and one user is admin, one user is user, right? So now we have to we just need to change here. I will make another copy of this one. Okay, JDBC custom. Okay, and I will make this configuration, which is this one. And now I'm going to change our custom one, which has what? Which has don't have this one now. Instead, don't have this one now. Instead, I'm going to tell how to query my database. Then I'm going to do is manager.set query. What's the query? Set username. What's the query? Oh my god, what's the API? Set users by query name, and here dot set users by query name, and here we will select the username. This one is email, right? Because we are using email. See here, and the password is a password. Password is password. Enabled is from not users. We are from employee. Okay, where email is something. And then manager.set authority by username query. Why don't you generate it by yourself? Then I can just modify. Set authority. It's authority, right? Set authority by username. Oh, just select. Okay, sorry, my bad. I don't want to write. Okay, so here. Okay, this one. And I will select what I use here. This is username. Okay, I use username here. Okay, username and authority from roles where username is this one. Okay, so here, see here, this one I use email. This one I forgot. I use username. I should use. It's better to use email. See if it works. Okay. Now let me restart the application to start from scratch. Okay, so let's try. See here, row and test. Basically, if it works, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and seems not working. Let's see what happened. Access denied. No column enabled. What I use? I use enable, guys. My bad. Okay, enable. Restart. Okay. Oh, this one won't restart. So I'm going to use this one. Debug. Debug Control F9. It's gonna be a reload application. So here, let's try one more time. Denied. And let's take a look at what's the reason access denied. Bad credentials. Yeah, why is bad credentials? Let me check. Okay. Oh, yeah, you do. Because I change to be email called John. Okay. So I use John to test.com. Okay, now get it. Okay, it also prove it works. Okay, and Edward, Edward. Okay. So that's this one. Okay, now in this video, just now we demoed another way, which is you can also customize your JDBC, which is tell what's the queries you want. Okay, and we connect to different database, also different columns also. Okay. I'm going to take a break now. Just now, we only customized for the user detail service and password encoder, which is based on our authentication flow. We only customized these two, right? But now, if I want to deal with Spring Beans, which is using Spring data, then both of the ways we just talk about doesn't work, because with Spring data, we need to have repository, need to have a service layer to do the thing, right? So in this case, you also need to customize your authentication provider, which is we are going to talk about, okay? So DAO Authentication Provider is an authentication provider implementation that uses detail service and the password encoder to authenticate a username password if you want to control everything by yourself, okay? Then in the user detail service, you must return the user details, okay? And the DAO Authentication Provider validates the user detail, then return an authentication that has a principal that is user detail returned by the user detail service. Basically, what is going to happen is in the authentication, this part is authentication filter. It will pass username password, which is username password authenticate token has username password. It's going to pass to the authentication manager. Authentication manager has a method called authenticate, okay? And it will ask you to give authentication token to that. This is one implementation of the authentication interface, the object, okay, in the security context. So then authentication manager will delegate it to provider manager will delegate it to what? Authentication provider. And if you want to connect to your own database, do DAO layers, then you have to provide a implementation of a DAO authentication provider. For this DAO authentication provider, you will provide user details and user password encoder. Once everything finished, it's going to return what? Return also user detail, username password authentication token has user details and authorities. And this one going to be eventually hold inside the security context. And security context is going to be held in security context holder. And what we are going to do here now is we will write the code for this part, okay, for this part. And to do that, we have to have a user. And for this user, you can use other names as you want. I just use user, okay. And I'm going to have a role, a collection of roles, okay. Still, for this demo, I'm not going to create like a sign up, which is created. I'll directly add into the database. Okay, and I'm going to using Spring data along with the long book, which is the annotation data here. Now let's take a look at, okay. So the first thing we need to have our domain model. Close all, and I'm going to have our domain model for the user, okay. And for the user, this user is an entity, and this entity, just put a data here, which have a getter, setters, toString, hash code equals default arguments and ID, private ID, int ID, okay. And have a, let's use a first name, and have a last name, let's have email, let's have a password, and it has other things you can decide by yourself, okay. And then let's have a rows, okay. And this one you can also make as another table. Here I just make it to be a rows. Here for this part I just copy paste, okay. I don't want to write, okay. Then canonical copy paste. Private list of string, and I will call rows, okay, here. And then I'm going to do this one is for fetch eager, which is when I fetch fetch email, okay, fetch user by email, it will automatically fetch this element, which is a collection of strings. So here this is the element collection, and fetch which is a fetch equal. I think by default is lazy, right? Then the collection in the users, you also need to map as another table. Otherwise, how to store this row? You using comma separated or using hyphen separated, right? So how to do is this one, okay? Which is you have a column table, you give your you give your table's name. Oh, I may have one more already, right? Here I may have one more already. I will just call another name, okay? For this one, I'll call another name. And you join column, you join by what? Join by user ID. This user ID eventually gonna be value of this ID. Excuse me. What's the collection type? And here I will have a name. I will call my rows, okay? I don't have a good name. And I have a join column. And here use annotation join column. And I have a name equals, here you decide, okay? And then we are going to have a last one, which is a column name, which is the column name in this table. It's gonna be user ID. We're gonna match to this user's this ID, and another one is matched to this one. I will have a column name. Column name is row. Okay. So in this table, my rows it only have two columns. One is user ID. One is this row. Okay. Now I have this part. Then I'm going to have my repository. I'm going to use Spring Data, which is user repository. Okay, user repository, and I'm going to use interface and extends on JdbcUserDetailsManager. Make sure this user is what we defined is this one. Okay, not using, because this one also Spring also have one. And then we will annotate this one user repository. Okay. And here I'm going to have an optional user, and I'll find by email. Did I use email? I think I have email, right? Yes, find by email. Okay. Yeah, find by email. It doesn't give me string. Email. Okay. And optional, make sure we import it. Okay. So we have user repository, and we have this one, which is basically used to replace what? Used to replace, actually is used to replace this part. Okay, find by the email. Then we have to do what? Then based on our diagram, we have to customize our user detail service. For this case, we are going to do is I'm going to have a service layer. And then I'm going to have a Java class, which is called the custom user details service. Okay, and for this one we need to implement user detail service. And here I'm going to add annotation called the service layer. Okay, and for this one, what are we going to do? For this one, you have to override the method which is called this one. Load user by username. This one is actually for us is an email. Okay, and you tell what you're gonna to do it for that. Here, I didn't return anything. Okay, so with this user detail service, I must use this repository. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the constructor-based dependency injection user repository, and I will make it to be all required argument. When you define final with this long book annotation, it will generate a constructor based on these final keywords. Okay, so here after that, I'm going to get an optional user, right? I will say user optional equals what? User repository dot what? Find by email, which the email is this one. And we get the user. Okay, make sure it's this one. Okay. Actually is this one. We get a user, then we have to populate what? We have to populate a user detail. And the first thing is we have to make sure if user is present. and if not present, I'm going to through uname not found. Okay, I couldn't find this user. And if it present, then I'm going to user.get, right? Then I have to build using the user to build user details. And here you have what? You have user details, okay? Details, user details equals another user. Do you remember here? Here in memory, how we built an user? We use this user. This is gonna return what? User details. We just need to change the username, password, roles to be what? To be from a database, from this user. And because I already have a user here, and if I want to use Spring's built-in user, which is this one, then I have to use with my package, which is this one. I have to do because I already have a I already have my customer defined class called user. If I directly type a user here, it will always refer to what? It will always refer to my own one. So here I have to use this one, then it will have a builder, then dot username. Username is what? User.getEmail, which is this one, right? And the password is gonna be user.getPassword, you know. And you can also build the roles, but here roles gonna have problem because for these roles it only have a method which is using var arguments, and what we have inside here is a string of roles. The type doesn't match, and there's no very intuitive or easy way to convert a list of users to be multiple values, because here expect to be admin, to be expect to be user, which are multiple values, right? But we are a collection of single value. One in Java variable can only hold one value. So I'm not going to use user for now. I'm going to use authorities, because authority is going to accept a collection of authorities. So I'm going to have authorities, and I'm going to do like this way: user dot get roles, and once I get roles, I will map to what? Map each string role into a new. This is JavaScript. Okay, this is Java's new simple granted authority. But we talk about it later. Even take a look at it here. Dot roles. Even though we do like this way, eventually it's going to add each of a row you passed into a new simple granted authority, and that's what we do the manually here. Okay, R, then where should I collect? Dot collected? No, this one. Dot to list, and then I'm going to return user details. Dot build. Okay. Let's details. Any errors? White has lambda can be replaced with okay. I just do like this way. Okay. I couldn't remember. Probably is called simple new, like this way. Like this way. Okay. Then I return the user details, which is this is my custom idea of how to load the user by username. First, we get find by email, and not find use username return not found, right? And if find, I get a user, then I use my own user to populate a user details, which is required by Spring Security. Okay, we have already done so far. So last step is I have to configure our Spring Security to use my customer user detail service. How to do it? Last slide. Okay. Yes, you have to provide your own authentication provider. From there, you set about your user detail service. So now let me show you how to do it. Did I comment this one? Okay. Then I'm going to just copy this part, and others I'm going to write it from scratch. So here gonna be Spring Security custom DAO provider. Okay, Authentication Provider. Okay, and this one is so long. Oh my goodness, configuration. Okay, and now this one no change, okay, no need to do any change. The thing is we only do is bin public authentication provider, okay, and then here have a bin public password encoder, and return new by created password, and here we will have a DAO authentication provider and DAO auth provider. You will set a password encoder auth provider dot set user detail service, and for this user detail service we already have, which is our customized one. Since we are using annotation since I'm using annotation service, then a Spring Manager bin. For Spring Manager bin, as usual, I'm going to do a dependency injection, use the final user detail service, okay, and here I'm going to add a required argument. It's gonna be populate using our implementation custom, okay. I'm using a P2I, and here I'm going to use the customer. What did I say? User detail service, okay. And then last step is return authentication auth provider. That's it. So this is the authentication provider. If we customize, we are going to use it for JWT too, okay. So what we did, we create our own user. You decide where you want or what the table gonna be look like, okay. And we have my own repository, which is going to be used to find our user in and to be used in our customer user detail service. And in the customer user detail service, just implement user detail service. It only has one method called user by load user by username, and here you will populate user detail if finished, okay. Here just have a what's the redundant. We just return here to make it more concise of a code, okay, like this, okay. So there's no other line I don't like, okay. And then this is going to be used by an authentication provider, okay. It's a DL authentication provider. You have to give your detail service and password encoder exactly match our diagram, okay. DL authentication provider, user detail service, password encoder, okay. So now let's test if it works. Before we have to test, I have to refresh. Okay, now it has two tables being generated. One is employee, one is my roles, right? So for the employee, first let me copy my password, okay. This one, because I don't have a tool now to generate the by creation to generate, okay. So I'm going to here in the employee. That's what we deal with. Is it employee? Oh, not employee. What's the table name I'm using? User. Remember, it's this user, not this users. Users is the first time when we create table use users. This one, okay. This one and my roles, okay. So for this user, I'm going to add someone. Let me do one more time, okay. I don't want to auto. I'm going to use a generated value identity, okay. I don't want to put the primary key. Then restart again. Okay, now let's go back, refresh, have a user table, and now add. I just need to add an email. Hey, that doesn't still show. I have to do. Let me one more time. Okay, let me change the table name to be something else. Table name. I will just call my user. Okay. Start. One is my user, one is my roles. I should use my role. Okay, I have my user and my role. These two tables. Okay, let's. See, it's automatically generated. Okay, this one is not correct. You can drop. I'm not using. Okay. It has a reference to another table, so I can only drop. So anyway, doesn't matter. Email, I was using the same John at what's the name? Test.com. The first name John, last name Edward. Okay, let's choose now. It's called jj@test.com. But the password is same. Okay, 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, and then I do another one. jjqq@test.com, and called QQ, called Edward, and DOE. Okay, and same 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, and upload, and then go to my role. My role, I have to have roles. Okay, so I'm going to add some. This is 1 has admin. Okay, admin. 2, let's add one more. You can also add a 1 which says user. So for one, this user, it has 2 rows. Okay, 2 role is user. Okay, this is a role. Oh no, no more. Oh yeah, 2 user, and that's it. Okay, so for the user JJQQ, the password both is 1 2 3 5. This is their roles. Okay, so now let's take a look at if we can authenticate it successfully. Okay, let me double check configuration. Oh no, okay, not used. Okay, close all. I'm just using this one. Now let's do our HTTP test. So here, if I use this one, it should fail for 1. Okay, if I change to be used JJ, if everything works, it should success. Okay, so success JJ, right? And QQ success. Okay, so that is the authentication part. And we use DL. Basically, when you use DL, you customize what? You customize your DL authentication provider. For this DL authentication provider, you must customize your detail service and the password. For this user detail service, you just need to populate user details. Basically, is the authorities and username, and you can also put a password inside. Okay, these 3. Okay. Hope it makes sense to you, and we'll come back to do in another way when we talk about JWT. Another way is we are no longer, for this user, we are going to simplify to do something on it. Okay, so thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.